is creating a scene very similar to this here. Now there's a lot of parts to this, which means we're going to be building up like a collection of assets over several different scenes. So you can see here that there's a fence, we've got a house, of course, we've got some trees, we've got a little bridge and a landscape, some grass down here, we've got a well, flowers, there's a few other things as well, the little bench and so on. So we're going to start with the today we're just going to start with this fence and build up this asset here, and then next one we'll look at the house and the well, and we'll do the landscape and other things last, but this fence is pretty straightforward here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in a new scene. We'll do each of these separately, and I'm going to delete this here, and actually I don't need to delete that. I'm going to put that cube back in, and I'm going to go into edit mode. So while I'm in edit mode, I'm going to switch to face mode, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this in here and that in there, so I get like a little fence post, I guess, and bring this up a little bit so it's about that high. Now I'm going to go back to object mode, so tab is the shortcut to go back to object mode, and I will push Alt D. Now that's going to make a duplicate that I can move around, but I want it to only move along the y-axis, which is this green line. So I can just push Y and move it to about here. So now that's made a duplicate. Any change I make to one of them will be made to the other. But we can just leave that for now. What I want to do now is making sure I'm in object mode, add mesh. If you go to add something and you see it just says these things here, you don't want to add it because it means you're in edit mode. So we want to be in object mode, add mesh, and once again I'm going to add a cube, and then I'll switch to edit mode for the cube, and I'm moving this stuff in. Okay, you've got to be careful not to use extrude for everything because a lot of the time it's not actually needed. I'm going to bring this bit down here, switch underneath here, and bring that up to there. And I'll hit tab and I'll move this down a little bit to the bottom, and then I will push Alt D to make that duplicate, and I haven't clicked yet, so I'm going to push Z and bring it up to about there. Now I just realized I'm going to need a bit more space on the front of here to put my fence panel, so I'm going to hit tab, right click this one and bring it in. You'll see that both of them are getting modified now. So I've got my fence post here. I might even move it just a little bit that way, and that one as well, just a little bit that way, just so it's not poking out the end here or that other end. Okay, so in object mode, I'm going to add another mesh, and this one is going to be a cube, and I'm going to go into edit mode for this and bring this in here, bring the other side in so it's sitting in there like that. This side I'm going to bring into about here, and this side I'm going to bring in so it's just not touching that one there, and then the front end like that. I want them to be reasonably thin panels. Now this top one I'm going to bring up, and now I'm going to use what's called the ring cut. So Control R, and I'm going to do a vertical ring cut like that, and it doesn't have to be perfectly centered, but in the center is pretty good. Now I'll be in edge mode from that ring cut, so I'll select that top point and bring that up like that there. Now I'm going to use Alt D. I'll use Shift D. There's two different types of duplicate. There is duplicate and there's duplicate linked. Duplicate linked is what I've been using at the moment, and that will make a new copy, but it's linked to the previous one, so any changes will occur to any of them. But what I'm going to do is make just a duplicate, and I'm going to move it along the y-axis, so I push Y, and I'll pop it there, and I'll make one more, Shift D, and push Y, and move it along there. And I'll make one more, Y, and move it along, like that there. Now the reason I wanted to make those duplicates is not linked duplicates, is so that I can modify them. And so what we're going to do with this is I'm going to hold down and select all of these and push Alt D now on all 4 of them and move them along. And then Alt D and move them along. Probably leave a little bit of a gap between some of them. And then for this last one here, Alt D, I'll make a few copies. I'll just pick one at random, move it along like that. And then I'll just move these other ones and kind of space them out with the little green arrow so that they're all evenly spaced, or else it'll look funny if there's one that has a bigger gap than the others. Okay, so that looks pretty good there. Now you see if I tab into any of these that I'm going to be editing multiple versions, which is going to make my work a lot quicker. I don't need to edit all of these. But let's start on this post here. I'm going to tab into it, and what I'm actually going to do is push A to select everything, and then I'm going to subdivide it. I'm going to subdivide it twice so that it looks like this here. Now what that's going to allow me to do is I'm going to change down here from edit mode into sculpt mode. And what I'll be able to do with this is kind of sculpt this. I don't want to be too rough with it. I just move my mouse over it and it will change it slightly. If I click subtract over here, I'll be able to make it go indented a little bit. And it's going to make it look more like a wooden post than it did before. So make sure I get those top bits. And that looks pretty good. What you don't want to do is you don't want to do this. Okay, because it doesn't look like a wooden post, it just looks like something's wrong with the fence. So I've done that for that one, and I'll go back to object mode, and I'll pick one of these other ones and go into edit mode. And I'll do the same thing, select it all and subdivide it, probably twice. Or I don't need to subdivide this one actually. So Control Z that. I can do a loop cut and slide, and I'll move my mouse over it and do it about 4 or 5 times like that. And then just click. That'll work a lot better. Otherwise we'll get way too many faces on this. Then I'll go into sculpt mode and slightly sculpt that there using add and subtract. And you don't want to go over the top with it. It's just a subtle effect. Because we will add some other modifiers to this. I went too much on that there. Okay. So I'll go back into object mode, pick the next one, ring cut this, and select the, go back to sculpt mode now. Change it a little bit. Don't worry that it looks kind of funny at the moment. When we add some materials to it and render it, it'll look pretty good. So go back to object mode, grab the last or second last one, ring cut that. And 4 or 5 times is enough. And I'm going to go to sculpt mode. Ring cut is Control R, by the way, but oops. Oh, yeah, sculpt mode. And I'll use add this time. Okay, and then lastly, object mode on this one, Control R, or you can push it over here, loop cut and slide it's called. And then sculpt mode is down there. All right, so now that I've done that, I'm not going to worry about those panels along the back there. I'm going to switch back to object mode. And I'm not too concerned about the back of it because we're not going to see it. This here, this panel, I actually want to make a little bit shorter. So I might just go into object mode, select the top faces, and pull those down a bit like that. Okay, so that's pretty good there. So now the last bit to worry about is just applying a material to the whole thing. And I did want to put another modifier on it. I might do in a minute. We'll have a look and see how it looks. But material, we're going to go new material. We're going to call it dark wood, and its diffuse color is going to be a dark brown color, like that there. We want to turn the specularity intensity all the way down to 0. Specularity, if you turn it on, you can see the shiny preview here. It makes things look like plastic, and wood isn't plastic, so we shouldn't worry about that. We just want to have the color on it. Now for these here, all we're going to do is pick that dark wood material. So we just right click on them, click the little globy thing here, and select dark wood material, dark wood, and then for these bits here, dark wood. Now we've got our fence. Now, just very quickly, I'll see what happens if I add a bevel modifier to this. If I add a bevel modifier, I can get some interesting looking effects, but I'm not too sure about whether they really work. And it's probably not necessary because it's just going to be way too much detail. So I'm going to leave it at that. Now, as an example of what this might look like when it's rendered, you can just watch the next bit. Don't try to do this at the moment. I'll just give you a quick example of what it could look like when it's done. We'll put on like an evening sky here. Okay. And let's see where the camera's pointing there. So if I hit F12, okay, so you can see here that the blending mode, not the blending mode, the render mode, I've just put a background in it, and you can see that it looks quite neat. Now, if we added more detail to these, and you can see the shading in here, we'll be adding shadows and stuff to it. For example, if I just go back to my 3D view and add a mesh, a plane, and I'll just add that plane to the bottom of this and scale it all the way up. I do have a light source here, and this light source should receive shadows. So it's got some shadows behind there, but it's all stuff that we'll be playing with over time. So if I put this as a sun and hit F12, well, the sun's pointing that way, so I get the shadows behind it, but I can rotate that sun around so it's not facing that way. I'll make it face the other way just so we can see that the shadows do work. And I can see that there's shadows on that fence, there's shadows on here, and it's looking really nice. So when we actually make the rest of the scene, so the house, the wishing well, the trees, all that stuff, we put it together, we'll render it, it'll look really nice when we're done. So make sure you save that. File, save, and save it as fence. Save as, and save it in here as fence. This is my home computer, so I won't have this stuff at school. I'll have to upload it. Fence.blend and save as .blend file. Done.